Canine compulsive disorder. So we know that lots of humans suffer from obsessive compulsive disorder, that it's an all-consuming, frantic behaviours they have, the addictive behaviours almost. They have to act out certain things in certain orders to be able to kind of cope with the world. It's a mental disease, a mental illness, and it can be really distressing and very difficult. With canines, with dogs, we tend to call it canine compulsive disorder because some people will say, well, dogs can't obsess. Now, whether we think they are capable of obsessing or not obsessing is by the by, really. But what they can do is obviously show some of these compulsive disorders and these compulsive actions. And basically, it's anything that is done out of context. It's a behaviour that happens out of context. And it can often go on for a very long time. And dogs can injure themselves doing it, cause all sorts of problems. It's very distressing to watch. It's distressing for the dogs as well. So they get into these loops of behaviour, and it may be stemmed from something their breed was bred to do. So you may get tail chasing, for example, in some herding breeds. So instead of chasing sheep and herding cattle and whatever, they end up herding their own tails. There's lots of things that could possibly be linked to that sort of breed-specific job, but they're doing it out of context. They're doing it continually. It's something that kind of takes their lives over, and ours really, and it can be self-harming. It's different from a fear-based issue because fear-based behaviours will come out only when the presence of the thing they're fearful is there, and then they will stop that behaviour. So this will happen at any time, and like I say, will often go on for long periods of time, and it can be so extreme that some dogs have to be put to sleep because of it. So it's a big problem. Now, there are lots of things that dogs can do that look like canine compulsive disorder, so not necessarily rooted in an anomaly in the brain. It could be lots of different reasons, and we'll look at some of those reasons in a minute. Let's look at the common behaviours we see when we think about a dog who's having a compulsive disorder. So one of the biggest ones is light or shadow chasing. So they could be chasing the shadows that are coming through onto the floor. They might chase the sparkles in moving water, so either in a lake or in their water bowl. It could be that they chase the reflections of watches, or some owners think it's funny to get dogs to chase laser pens, and then that turns into obsession. So it's never a good idea to do that. So it's any kind of shadow or light that kind of stimulates them to pounce, to bark at, to bite at, this kind of thing. You get tail chasing. So the dog will continually circle and try and chase their tail. Sometimes they'll catch hold of it. Sometimes they'll gnaw at it, lick at it, pull at it, and it can go on for ages. And of course, they can then get damage to the tail. Dogs often end up having parts or all of their tail amputated because of it. Now, that could be an obsession, or it could be related to something else, like a pain issue. But, it's a behaviour that needs to be sorted. You get some breeds that are what we call flank suckers. So they will continually suck or lick at their back leg or a part of their body. You might have sort of self-mutilation where they're constantly licking at an area. They don't seem to stop. And there's certain breeds that are predisposed to sort of set up for that behaviour. Some might lick or suck objects instead. So they might lick walls or suck a blanket. They might lick us. Again, that licking is absolutely obsessive, goes on for an awful long time. Again, lots of reasons behind that, not necessarily a compulsive disorder in the brain. There could be other reasons. They can be circling, they could be fly snapping. So there's some breeds that will snap at imaginary flies. So their head comes up, they often look like in quite a trance-like state, and they snap at these imaginary flies all the time. They could be jumping up at them as well and kind of just looking like there's an animal, an insect there, but there's nothing there. You'll get other dogs that obsessively bark. Now, of course, dogs bark, and dogs often bark for a reason. But these dogs seem to bark for no reason at all. Again, might seem like quite trance-like, really hard to get them to stop. There's no known trigger. You know, things can be investigated. There's no sounds that we can't hear. It simply is that they just have this obsessive barking action going on. They can get obsessive over objects. That could be a toy, it could be anything, but they are needing to have that object in sight or holding that object. It might be linked in with blanket sucking as well, or something. They might be sucking or gnawing on that object a lot. You could get polydipsia or polyphagia, which basically is drinking too much or eating too much. So you'll get the odd dog that just constantly empties their water bowl. They're just constantly licking at it, constantly taking in too much water to the point where they vomit it up again. You get other dogs that just want to eat anything, and that could be linked to another disorder called pica, which is eating objects that are inappropriate. So that could be stones, socks, anything that isn't digestible. And of course these dogs have massive problems, end up usually in the vet with a blockage, which needs operation, medical intervention. You can even get dogs that look like they're hallucinating, and they possibly are. You may have a dog that suddenly becomes extremely worried about something, or suddenly doesn't want to come in from the garden, or just acts really oddly for a short amount of time and then goes back to being normal. And these could be put down to hallucinations that they're seeing. Again, could be some medical issues with that, but it could also be that it is linked as a compulsive disorder.